Welcome to the Lean Out Your Business podcast, a show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs accelerate business growth and simplify success. I'm your host, Crista Grasso, and I've been working with businesses for more than 2 decades to help them lean out and optimize what's working while eliminating anything that's not adding value. So if you are ready to get more time back in your day, more profit in your business, and to do business differently, growing and scaling on your terms, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. Today, I am super excited to share Jessica Maine with you because Jessica is part of my team. And so not only are you going to get to know her a little bit better, which is going to be great, but we're also going to talk about a really important topic, which is ways to be prepared for the entrepreneurial roller coaster, because entrepreneurship is absolutely a roller coaster ride and a half. And Jessica has a lot of experience with this, and she's going to share some of her journey with us today so that you guys can leave better prepared. So Jess, I'm super excited that you're here. And before I turn things over to you, let me tell everybody a little bit more about you. So Jessica Maine is an advocate for individuality, expression, and social consciousness. She has spent her career equipping other professionals with personal and business development through strategy, community leadership, and education. As I mentioned, Jess is part of Team Lean Out Method. She is the sales and marketing director, as well as the accountability coach inside our accelerator. And she is my right-hand woman. So I am super excited for you guys to get to know her a little bit better today too. So Jess, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and a part of the team.
All right, so let's dive right into the entrepreneurial roller coaster. So when we were initially talking, when you were going through your interview process, there were several things that you had shared that really struck me. And I thought, what a great compliment to what we do in Lean Out Method, and what a great fit you're going to be. Plus, you're bringing so much like wealth of experience into the team. And so I want you to share with everybody else some of what you saw when you were a community director and you were mentoring all of these other small businesses and startups, because it was those patterns that you had shared with me that just really struck me. And I think other people will relate to as well. So tell us a little bit about that and some of what you experienced.
There were a range of patterns. So let's just say like there's time management and organization. That's always a stickler for a lot of people that have a lot of the vision, but they don't know how to execute. And then there's the infamous burnout. Everyone wears so many hats in the beginning because a lot of people are solopreneurs in the beginning and then they expand over time. But it's how do you avoid burnout when you're wearing 5 different hats, if not more at a time? Hiring someone, getting to the point where it's like, it's great to be able to expand, but then it's like, how do you expand? What's the hiring process? A lot of people have never been in the role of HR before, but they become the entire HR department. So really having to balance all of that out, and then growing in an efficient manner where they are documenting things along the way and not recreating the wheel every single time something new comes up. So a lot of the trends that I started to see from a lot of the businesses and companies that I worked with allowed me to look at a different lens. So it's like, if I started to see the same things from different companies happening at different times, then I was like, let's be preventative, let's be more proactive. And I started to create workshops to actually help them prepare it ahead of time instead of having to do damage control after the fact. So that was something that was really beneficial, to the point where we started to have quarterly and sometimes, if necessary, monthly workshops to make sure that they got unstuck and they weren't always having to experience these big monumental events in a negative way.
Yeah, because I think the reality is this. You're going to experience every one of those things at some point throughout your entrepreneurial journey. And sometimes, like a roller coaster, you're going to loop back around and experience it again the next time
you are
business growth.
Yes, for sure. It's inevitable and it's going to happen. It's just like, okay, the difference for me is just like, are you going to be latched in, or are you going to be like hanging on for dear life? So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I love that. And so let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you shared in those workshops and some things that people can really be thinking about and taking away. So let's start with burnout. So
Mhm.
if somebody is wearing all the hats and doing all the things and starting to, they're not in like big B burnout, they're in more little b burnout, where they're starting to feel the burnout coming. What are
Mhm.
some of the things that you've shared with them or that you think really make sense for them to be watching out for and thinking about?
What what I would do is basically, or what I actually do is have them step out of themselves for a moment and just kind of document what it is that they're doing. So it's like, okay, what does your day look like? Are you being um, like efficient with your time? Or because at this point, when they get to burnout, a lot of times there's a lot of chaos going on in their head, and they don't even realize it because they're stuck in the chaos. So for me, what I've learned is helping them create capacity. And so it's like if they can get it out of their head and onto paper or onto, for people in the digital world, typing it out, and it gives them space. So a lot of times writing down what it is they're doing, and then they see, well, I'm busy, but I'm not doing anything that's meaningful right now. So it's like I'm sitting here, but I've been staring at a screen, or I'm switching gears with too many things at once to where I'm not able to actually focus and get something done. So it's actually evaluating what they're doing on a daily basis and finding a way to organize their thoughts and create capacity.
Yeah, I think that's critical. That's so important. And so much of the time, people work so much harder than they need to
Yes.
because they haven't taken the time to do that. So they're busy, they're exhausted, but at the end of the day, they did almost nothing that's actually going to make a difference in the business. And how frustrating is that?
Exactly. It's like you look back and you don't have anything to show for all of your mental exhaustion, your physical exhaustion, and then you feel like you're not progressing. That's, to me, that's just like where you kind of feel like you're hitting the brick wall and you don't know why, because you think you're giving it your all, and that's what it feels like, but yet your output, or, what you're working towards, you don't get to see that.
Yeah, and so I think that transitions nicely into one of the other topics that you talked about, which is really not knowing how to grow efficiently, right? And so every business is always in a state of growth, right? Growth itself is a bit of a roller coaster. It's not like we're always seeing, dramatic spikes, but you're always in a period of growth, even if it's self-growth as you're going through some of those more challenging times.
Mhm.
But what do you tell people when they hit some sort of growth or they want to be moving to the next level of growth and they're saying, now what?
Right. Um, a lot of times I've learned businesses operate with comparison to another company or another organization. And so I simply ask, what does growth look like for you? And honestly, it's also taking a moment to, and if they haven't already, it makes them start, okay, where are you? What are you using to determine your growth? So there are a couple of questions that need to be answered in order to be able to determine what growth looks like for an individual organization. Because a lot of times, like, well, I just want this. And to them, some companies' growth is a certain dollar amount. But okay, that's great. So how much did you, like, what was your revenue in this area, in this quarter? And if they're not able to even communicate, it's like, how are you even tracking your growth? And if you're comparing yourself from, let's just say if it is a startup that doesn't, let's just say it's someone that started out with not having a lot of capital or a lot of financial resources initially, but they're comparing themselves to another organization that does. It's great to look at certain things, but at the same time, you have to evaluate and assess based on your company and business and set goals and targets and actually make it measurable so you can determine how you're growing. And then when you do get to that point, it's also eliminating, I call it like kind of like skimming the excess and taking certain things off to determine you don't have to do everything. You want to focus on, okay, this is what sets me apart and what makes me different. Like what's going to make someone want to be your client, your customer. And so you have to focus on what is actually working well and what you want to have as your niche in the organization, like in comparison to the other companies. So you can't be the same as everyone else.
Yeah, I love the quote, and I'm going to totally get it wrong, but it's like, I'm not competing with anyone but myself. My goal is to be better than I was yesterday. And I
Yes.
know somebody can look up, there's a real quote out there that's not that, but I like the sentiment of that is sure, it's good to be looking around just simply so you're aware. But at the end of the day, don't spend your time looking at others. Spend your time looking at yourself and your business and how can you make your business better than it was yesterday? Not
Right.
how can you catch up with this other business when you have no idea if their context is the same or different than yours.
Right. Exactly.
So let's talk about some examples because having worked with so many different small businesses and startups, I'm sure you've seen a lot of companies go through that roller coaster. Is there any that really stand out to you that kind of hit some rough patches but really came out the other side?
Yes, I can think of one in particular. He was at the point where he was experiencing a little bit of burnout and he saw the need to actually hire a new person, which is a good problem to have. But he just didn't know how. And so we actually sat down and had a series of meetings in order to kind of figure out, okay, if you were to hire someone, what does it look like? What dynamic would you desire? Do you want them to be working alongside you every day? Are they going to be working remotely? Or is it going to be a combination, like a hybrid sense of both? And then it's what is also as an individual, what task are you wanting to delegate to this individual so you can know it's going to basically, it's like that kind of like that trust and validate in a sense without micromanaging someone. And then also figuring out how you're going to train them adequately. So it's like, okay, what time do you need to get back for yourself? And then what are you okay with letting that person completely take ownership of to where you can empower them and not micromanage? And so we had that process laid out. And then he went through the hiring process in terms of he gathered the information that he needed and documented it along the way because he ended up hiring 2 people within the span of 3 months, which was a really good thing to have 2 additions instead of just one. But after actually sitting down and mapping out what does this look like for me and my business instead of modeling it after every other business or assuming what every other business does, he was able to make some really good hires and they're still with him now and they're expanding and he's been allowed to maximize his time by being able to delegate the necessary tasks.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you said there is so incredibly important and something that I talk about a lot as well is empower but don't micromanage, right? If you're going to bring somebody onto your team, you're not as a business owner actually gaining everything if all you're doing is giving somebody a to-do list every day and micromanaging everything they're doing. You
Right.
want somebody to have full ownership and accountability for something. And you need to, as a business leader, if that makes you super uncomfortable, get really comfortable with actually having somebody take full ownership of something. And you're there to, trust but verify in the beginning until you know that that person has it and you can truly just let them run with it.
Exactly.
Love it. All right. So aside from what you've done as the community director and some of those patterns that you've seen, I know there's some other things that you feel are really critical for success in business and that you've also leveraged as you've worked with these other companies. Let's talk about what some of those critical success factors are to you.
For me and the way I am as a person, building authentic relationships, and just building professional relationships and modeling that consistently. Accountability in a very authentic and raw way at times. And honestly, it's to me, empowerment and then education, those two tie in together. And I know I've kind of touched on that a little bit, but empowering others is just one thing that I also think is critical, especially from the position that I'm often in with working with businesses.
So let's dive a little deeper into accountability, because as soon as I met you, said she has to be an accountability coach inside Lean Out Method, because I love your very authentic relationship building approach. But the fact that you also will hold somebody accountable and not sugarcoat it, but at the same time come from a place of empathy and understanding, but still hold them accountable. And I think that that is so important. And I've seen a lot of other people, when they do try to hold people accountable, either they're too nice and too supportive and they don't actually put the accountability piece on, or they're so harsh and so, they don't really have that empathy piece down, where somebody can't hear what they're trying to say and they end up checking out. So for you, how do you think accountability works really well? And what have you seen for the patterns of success there?
Honestly, let's just say with accountability, people want to feel and be heard. So a lot of time it's information gathering, but not to the point where you're taking it in to dismiss it, but actually listening to them with an ear that gives you information on who they are as a person as well, and how that ties in with their business. So honestly, listening is a big component, in addition to knowing what their goals are and where they're trying to go, and then seeing where there's the disconnect, if there is one, and if not, making sure that you're equipping them with the tools to stay on track to reaching their goals. So when it comes to patterns that I've learned that have worked, is really making sure that when I have a conversation with someone, is, okay, where are you trying to go and what are you doing right now? Okay. If you ask the right questions, they can often tell you what it is that's missing. And for me, it's letting them know how to get to their destination. So it's a lot of times people are like, I know I want to get there, but I kind of don't know how. So you ask those guiding questions along the way, and then they start to connect, and make those connections. And then they all honestly have that self-realization, which to me is a lot of the perks of accountability. Is like, if you really know, you just needed to know that you knew. And so whenever you start to kind of lay things out and they get it out of their head and they communicate it in a certain way, you're able to kind of, even if it's my job to help them organize the information, I can do that for them. And then whenever we're meeting, again, it's just like, okay, remember, people love choices as well. So it's like, okay, you can either do this or do that. Based on what you told me, you wanted to get to this place. So here are your two options. Do you want to actually do this or do you not? And if they start to waver on what their initial goal is, it's just like, okay, this is what you initially told me. Why is this changing now? And a lot of times it could be situational. They could be experiencing a moment of burnout. So it's like, okay, let's not quit on the goal. Let's just make this adjustment. Let's take this little detour for you to still reach your destination. But ultimately, let's evaluate the why behind your actions right now. And often it's getting the information and giving them choices, and then holding them accountable to what they said that they would do, in a way to where it's like, I'm doing this because I care about you and I want you to be successful and I see your potential and your business's potential. But in this moment, you're forgetting that. And let me help you remember what you're here for.
Yeah, that's so good. So good. For any of you who have accountability coaches in your business, have them listen to what Jessica just said, because that right there is how you do accountability right. As we think about the entrepreneurial roller coaster, and we think about really being prepared for it and trying to be proactive instead of reactive, are there any other tips or any other things that you want to share with listeners?
One thing that comes to mind is knowing that it's important to always put yourself in the position of learning. So just because I'm been in the role of being an educator in different capacities, it doesn't mean that I ever want to stop learning. Honestly, just like society, there is constantly shifting and pivoting, and these new things are coming up. And I don't just mean doing things that are trendy. I'm more so wanting individuals to be aware of you don't have to indulge in and condone certain things, but it's nice to be knowledgeable so you know how to be sensitive to all of the things that are going on in the world, to where you're going to be faced with a lot of random challenges, especially when you get to the point where you're hiring new people. There's a lot of mindfulness that goes into hiring someone, and learning about other people, other cultures, how to be sensitive about certain things. You have to learn about different personality types and how to be effective with different people. So I'm not saying that you have to be 10,000 people for everyone else. It's just a matter of being open and receptive. And if you're a learner, that's one thing that also communicates with someone, that you can be open to receiving new information, because it's important to know that you don't know everything. But yet being willing to learn more shows to me a lot about an individual and their willingness to grow.
Yeah, I agree. There's a concept in Agile and Lean called being a lifelong learner. And I think that's absolutely critical. I think, anytime, even like if I am about to hire a coach, I won't hire a coach who doesn't have a coach. To me, that's critical. It's like, I want to see that that person gets the value of the thing that they're doing. And the same thing with learning. The second you think you know it all, that's usually the point in time when you have so much left to learn.
Exactly.
All right, Jess. So the final question that I always ask everybody, and I'm so dying to hear what your answer is, is how do you work smarter, not harder, and keep things lean?
Okay. Because I'm such an outside of the box person, I'm going to kind of merge two into one. So I have this motto that I acquired after I had my son, and it was learning how to, it's like basically take care of yourself first. And so if you take care of yourself first, then everything else kind of falls into place. So if we're taking care of ourselves first and we're creating balance in our life, because you have to have some balance. Too much of anything is not good. So creating the balance. And so with that, focus blocks. So it's one of those things to where it's like, I never put a name with it or had it so concise and organized. But after being a part of the Lean Out team, I'm like, that's it. That's it. And so it's like, I create balance in my life by having focus blocks. And I know for myself in the morning, that's when my brain is just vibrant and all my great ideas come together, and it's still quiet where I can schedule an email to send while the world is still sleeping. So for me, focus blocks create the balance that I need to be a better human, a more empathetic person. It helps me be a better mother, a better accountability coach. It helps me just be a better person because I have the balance that's so critical for me. So that's what I would say is like the critical component for me.
I absolutely love it. All right. So as we round things out here, I always ask people what's going on in your business and what are you most excited about next? So we're going to flip this what about Lean Out Method? Like, what are you most excited about in Lean Out Method? What's coming up for you? And kind of what about the role and some of what we have going on has you most excited?
What has me most excited is being able to tie in all of these concepts that I've always kind of thought and put together and I've executed, but to be in alignment with Lean Out Method, it feels right. It feels natural for me. And it also feels like an opportunity for me to be able to maximize, because now it's not just me alone. It's a whole team of people that come together to help people reach their goals and do it in a way to where they can still have their life. So honestly, it's my exciting moment. What I'm looking forward to is just being where I belong and like, okay, this is like kind of like feeling like I'm with my tribe. So that's what That's what I'm looking forward to.
And I could not be more excited that you are part of the tribe because, guys, Jess is amazing. In case you couldn't tell by this interview, she's flipping amazing. So I look forward to you getting to know her more. You'll see her inside the group. So if you are not yet a member of our Lean Out Circle, head to leanoutmethod.com/group. You definitely want to join, and you'll get to see Jess a little bit more and interact with her there. So Jess, thank you so much. Thanks for today. And everyone, we will see you next week.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. I hope you got a lot of value and actionable insights from today's show and would love if you take a moment to leave us a review. If you have any questions on today's episode or on how to lean out your business, join us over in our private Facebook community where every week we do live training and Q&A, and I'd love to have you be part of the conversation. Head to leanoutmethod.com/group to join us. And before you go, be sure to subscribe to the show so you're the first to know when we release a new episode. We'll see you next week.